Daily Fantasy Edge. Of course, I'm Peter Jennings, joined by Zeidenfeld and Adam Levitan. Today, we have a very special edition of the podcast. We have the Thanksgiving edition. So no one loves Thanksgiving and the food more than Adam, so I'll kick it to him first to give the news and notes on the podcast.
Well, it is the worst week of the year. Of course, it is Thanksgiving week. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there, to you and yours. The good news, the only good news about Thanksgiving to me is the 3-game slate every year is awesome. I think this is a particularly interesting 3-game slate due to some injuries that we'll talk about, due to some of the pricing that DraftKings did, particularly at the low end. So obviously everybody knows that Atlanta-New Orleans is the game of the slate, but in order to get to a lot of the guys in that game, we're going to have to talk about some plays in the other games, and there are some injuries in the other games too. So I think it's actually a really good 3-game slate, a really interesting one. And yeah, I mean, by far the best part of Thanksgiving is the slate. So I'm excited about that.
It is interesting. I feel like a total degenerate every Thanksgiving. We talked about this a ton. Adam and I both share that. Al, on the other hand, is a family man. He gets everything done. He has all the food and still somehow manages to play the slate. Al, how stoked are you for Thanksgiving?
Going out to Chicago again for this Thanksgiving. We kind of have to go back and forth because, like, we have family here in Los Angeles, we have family in Chicago. So we spend one holiday here and one holiday there is the plan every year, whether it's going to be, Christmas or Thanksgiving in Chicago, and then the other one we stay here in Los Angeles. So we're going to Chicago, which is perfect for me because the dinner's at like 3:30 or 4. Chicago time, which means we get there real early with the kids. The kids play, at their uncle's house, and they just kind of play around. I go down to the basement and I watch football, and everybody just kind of comes down. All the uncles end up coming downstairs, and it's a big family. It's like 30 people that ended up, 40 people that ended up coming to this Thanksgiving dinner. I just get to watch football all day while everybody goes upstairs and makes the food, and they call you up, you go eat, and then you go back down, you watch more football, and you talk and you chat. So, I don't understand what this whole locking yourself in an office thing has to be. You can enjoy both. Enjoy the food, the family, and the football. What's wrong with you, Adam?
Got a lot of responsibilities, man. We got news, we have ownership projections, we have 3 slates to play. I mean, we got a lot of work to do here. Not everybody's on the hashtag Smiz life just with their feet up. You know what I mean?
Most people are, though, on Thanksgiving. On Thanksgiving, most people are.
I have to go to my parents' house, bring the laptop. They have to coordinate the dinner around it. I'm sweating stuff like an animal. It's rough. I think it's a little better than Christmas, though. Christmas, I feel particularly bad, but it is an amazing slate with the NBA. And Adam, you did point out there are a lot of slates, and if you're going to play the showdown slates, in particular, that Atlanta-New Orleans game should be a lot of fun. So let's dive into the games. We have Chicago at Detroit first. Brutal spot here for Chicago, given they played on Sunday night, and now they're playing at 12:30 Eastern against Detroit. And Trubisky is a huge piece of news that we are waiting on. Right now, it sounds like the Bears are cautiously optimistic that he will play, Adam. What are your thoughts on his chances of playing and the rest of the news and notes on this game?
Yeah, I mean, the NFL did the Bears dirty. There's no doubt. They flexed that Bears game to Sunday Night Football when they didn't have to. There's so many stars in the Pittsburgh-Jacksonville game that they could have left on Sunday night and had a really good game and gotten a really good rating. Instead, they just screw over the Bears. I mean, that game ended midnight Eastern, and then they played 12:30. So it's not surprising to me that we have so many injury questions, the biggest of which, as Pete mentioned, is Mitchell Trubisky, who banged up his throwing shoulder late in that game on Sunday night. He is very questionable. The line, I think, opened 4.5 and now sits at 3 in a lot of spots. So a lot of people are thinking that Trubisky might sit or be limited. If he can't go, it'll be Chase Daniel. And Chase Daniel, I think, is a competent backup. At the very least, he knows the system. He's been in this Matt Nagy, Andy Reid system for 5 years. Last start Chase Daniel had, though, was back in 2015. So certainly would be a big downgrade to all of the Bears guys, but a limited Trubisky wouldn't be great either. So certainly something to watch closely there. Other injury news, Kerryon Johnson, not expecting him to play due to a knee injury, and that leaves the Lions really thin at running back. Theo Riddick has not carried the ball hardly at all. LeGarrette Blount is just the stone worst running back in the league, 2.3 yards per carry, actually averaging less than 1 yard per carry on his last 25. And then they have Zach Zenner, who we can get into in a little bit, but my boy Zach Zenner, I mean, when I first played preseason DFS 3.5 years ago, Zach Zenner was the actual president of team preseason. He was awesome. Dude cures cancer in the off season. He's stone minimum. It's obviously an atrocious matchup against this Bears front, but it's just fun to think that Zach Zenner on national TV could have a really good game. But Al, I think the most popular play in this game, or the play that people are most excited about, is probably Kenny Golladay, who has clearly established himself as the go-to guy for Matthew Stafford, with Marvin Jones out, with Golden Tate traded, with Michael Roberts also out.
Yeah, it was like 17 targets the last 2 weeks and an absurd mid to high 30s target percentage with basically everybody out. If you look at my YouTube thumbnail, he's going to eat. He's holding the big old turkey leg right on the thumbnail. Like, this is expected. He's going to be one of the players. There's two players that I think are going to be owned on the Lions. One, Kenny Golladay, two, Theo Riddick. Because of what you're saying, you're not probably going to be able to run the ball very well against the Bears front. So therefore, that means that Riddick, who's playing a lot of snaps in the slot now with all the injuries to the wide receivers, is going to play those, and he's going to play out of the backfield, maybe get a few more carries than he has been getting the last few weeks. They just have to throw the ball, and there's a very truncated amount of people that they can actually end up throwing it to with any sort of regularity, and those are the two.
Yeah. Theo Riddick, I think, I played him last week, and the ceiling is low because he's not really used in the red zone and he doesn't run routes deep down the field, but it's hard to find 6 to 8 targets below 4,500 or whatever it is on the slate. One other guy, Pete, and I want to get your take on this guy. Bruce Ellington has been playing like a version of the Golden Tate role, and Bruce Ellington is only 3,200 coming off of, I believe it was 7 targets last game. I was surprised DraftKings was not more aggressive moving his price up. It's weird, Bruce Ellington just signed with this team like 2 or 3 weeks ago, but I think he's in play here. What do you think about him?
Yeah, I have Bruce Ellington in my Monday through Thursday contest. Needed a cheap receiver to try to get as many Rams and Chiefs in my lineup, and I think he certainly is in play. You guys said on the other plays, Golladay is a lock button, so talented. Excited to see him finally playing well. I think Theo Riddick, Adam, you and I both played him on the main slate last week, and certainly he makes sense this week as well with the price and the savings to get guys from this Atlanta Saints game in. So I'm on all those plays. I think the other players that we should talk about are the receivers for the Bears if Trubisky plays. You have Anthony Miller and Taylor Gabriel getting usage. And then if you want to be contrarian, one running back that I think could win the slate for you that should be sub 10% owned, Tariq Cohen could have a big game here, but there's a lot of risk. So Al, do you have any interest in any of these Chicago players? We haven't talked about any of them really, but those are the three I think that stand out in terms of who you should consider at least in tournaments.
I mean, the Chicago players, as you mentioned, are all in a holding pattern, but as Adam said, Chase Daniel is well versed in this offense. The fact that he hasn't started a game in forever because he's got much more talented quarterbacks in front of him, people are going to say, well, I'm not going to play him at all. I think that's a mistake. I think that the Bears offense clearly takes a step backwards because Trubisky is actually good and Chase Daniel is actually a backup, but still Taylor Gabriel is 3,700. Tariq Cohen has big playability against a defense. It really doesn't stop people, especially pass catching backs. The Bears defense 100% in play for me. Probably my favorite defense on the slate, considering how many sacks Detroit's been giving up over the last month. There's definitely Bears that are in play. Anthony Miller as well at 4,400. Somebody else I'm considering for tournaments. We're going to have to find some value. The problem is I don't want to stack up players from this game knowing what's coming after dinner.
Yeah, the currently winnings will be nice if you stack up this game. But
yeah, you'd be like, oh my God, I'm winning all the money.
Screenshot life, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you want to gain some Twitter followers, just play everyone in this game. Enter all the high, payout structures, and then take a screenshot after that game, and then don't take a screenshot when you're winning $0 after the Saints. Adam, do you have any interest in these Chicago guys? I mean, yeah. Jordan Howard, I guess you could throw in the mix. I wouldn't play him. But who are you liking for Chicago?
Well, to me, it's very clear. I mean, Darius Slay is the only competent member of Detroit's secondary, and he will likely see a lot of Allen Robinson. Every other cornerback on Detroit is so bad. I mean, they've been benching guys. It's just a disaster in the rest of their secondary. And I was surprised DraftKings didn't move the price of Taylor Gabriel. I mean, just a month ago or 3 weeks ago, Taylor Gabriel was 5,100. Now he's 3,700. He plays a version of the Tyreek Hill role for Matt Nagy. So yeah, I think Taylor Gabriel is for sure an awesome play. Anthony Miller's just a good player. Detroit's been getting smashed in the slot. I think he's in play. And yeah, I certainly prefer Tariq Cohen, but Jordan Howard at 4,100, if you think the Bears play well and get a lead, and can milk this game to some degree, and maybe they go more run heavy if Chase Daniel is in, versus Mitchell Trubisky 4,100 is very cheap for Jordan Howard. I should note Adam Shaheen came back for a game but got hurt again. I mean, Trey Burton, we've seen kind of what he is. He's very touchdown dependent. They don't use him in the voluminous way that I thought that they should or they would before the season started, but he's one of 3 tight ends on this slate who I think could actually score 10 points or 12 points. There's just not that many options. So yeah, I think it's an interesting game. I think maybe there's more plays here than people realize just because they're so underpriced. Like I was shocked that DraftKings didn't move some of the prices on these guys.
Yeah, I think this is the game you need to get your value to get the studs from the last game. You just use a nice word, voluminous. Speaking of a guy who has a voluminous role, let's move to the Redskins at Cowboys. Ezekiel Elliott has just been dominating. One of my biggest regrets from last week was not having a more Ezekiel Elliott. There's a lot of news and notes here. The Alex Smith injury was obviously gruesome. What do we got here, Adam?
Yeah, I've been hard on Alex Smith. Obviously, I think I called him a coward on here a few weeks ago.
How do you feel now?
But I feel bad. I sent a tweet about him, about how much better Kirk Cousins is, 2 hours before the injury, an hour before the injury. Now I got people in my mentions being like, dance on the guy's grave, Adam, because they didn't realize I sent it before the injury.
Hashtag check the timestamp.
Yeah, check the timestamp. But look, I mean, I know this is a hot take. I don't think that the Redskins are that much worse with Colt McCoy. Colt McCoy has been awesome in the preseason for a long time. Colt McCoy is aggressive. His ADOT will undoubtedly be longer than Alex Smith's. And I know Colt McCoy has a weak arm, but he has balls. And Alex Smith has no balls whatsoever. It's just not good for fantasy. So I think Colt McCoy will be way more aggressive. I think it's good for all their pass catchers. I also think it's good for Dallas because Colt McCoy's aggression will lead to more turnovers, will lead to more plays for Dallas. So if you want to play that, there's an issue if you want to play Kenny Golladay and Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara and Drew Brees. I don't know if you can also fit Zeke, but I would probably prioritize, for me at least, getting to Zeke over Golladay, in this spot at home against this crumbling Washington team. They have so many injuries on both sides of the ball. They're near the bottom of the league in adjusted line yards. Dallas' offensive line is back in the top 10, getting healthier. To me, Zeke is a priority on this slate, and I know that that's not what a lot of the math says because Kenny Golladay looks so strong. But for me, Al, I would, if I could only have one, and I know there's a big price difference, but it's kind of hard to fit both. I would prefer Zeke even at 8,600 versus Golladay at 6,400.
Okay, so you're stuffing both of the Saints backs and Zeke then.
Maybe not both the same backs, but yeah, I mean, I play Michael Thomas every week. I got to stick with him. And yeah, I mean, we'll talk about Breeze when we get there and Julio.
There's a lot of different routes to go. It's funny, though. It only took you 11 minutes to turn this into an ADOT measuring contest. This game, there's a few guys. I mean, Zeke's one of them. Galladay's somebody I want to fit, but Zeke is somebody that you do have to consider. I think that Colt McCoy is fine. I know that he's going to be divisive. Some people are going to say, I'm not playing Colt McCoy. My question is, why? Because if everybody's going to be on Zeke, do you really want to be on Dak, for a few hundred more, especially with Chase Daniel and Colt McCoy out there? I want as much money that I can spend in my main lineup, in my cash game lineup, that I can spend on all the running back and wide receiver studs that I can fit in there. Tight end is a wasteland, just like it always is for the last 6 weeks or so. So I want to fit as much of the guys at running back and wide receiver as possible, which means I have to pay down at quarterback. I have no problem with Colt McCoy. I prefer McCoy to Chase Daniel, personally. That might be wrong. I just think that this is a better situation for offense for McCoy. And I don't see the issue with him. There's a lot of people that I've seen talking, kind of lurked around conversations in chat rooms and whatever else, where people are talking about, there's no way I'm playing McCoy. I don't trust Colt McCoy. He's not going to do good. If he has 230 yards and accounts for 2 touchdowns, you're swimming in it.
Yeah. You're swimming until Drew Brees and Matt Ryan go for 404.
Of course, but if you play those guys, you're sacrificing Zeke. If you play one of those guys, you're sacrificing Golladay. I think there are routes that you could have Zeke, both of the one or both of the New Orleans backs, one of the big wide receivers, and Galladay, as long as you go with this and then 2 value plays. I think it's possible to get there. It's just a matter of finding the pieces to the puzzle that fit in a way that you think you can get enough targets from the other guys.
My concern with Colt McCoy would be a road game in Dallas against a defense I think is pretty underrated, and like maybe no Chris Thompson, which I didn't mention, maybe no Chris Thompson, maybe no Jamison Crowder, no Paul Richardson. Like there's, I think, a reason that Alex Smith has been so unaggressive besides the fact that he always is. So I don't know, like it would concern me a little bit to play Colt McCoy in cash. But I hear you, like he's definitely better than people realize.
So you're going to play Chase Daniel there?
No, I'm probably getting up to one of Ryan or Breeze, I'm pretty sure.
Fair enough. So then you're sacrificing Galladay.
I don't want to give away my lineup, but
obviously, I'm just there's 3 games, so it's like it's not like
I know.
Like any discussions that we have.
That's why we shouldn't be doing this at all, because there's only 3 games, and now I'm out here giving away my lineup.
See, we had to lasso Adam out here for you guys.
Got him out. You got him tilted.
We're gonna need a 5-side. I finally fired him up.
You know what fires me up? Giving away my lineup. That's what gets me freaking fired up.
That's right. We're going to need some 5-star reviews. Thank you for me getting Adam fired up. Thank you. It's taken me 5 years. I finally did it. We're going to expect some 5-star reviews on iTunes. Thank you very much for tuning in, and have yourselves a happy Thanksgiving.
Levitan is finally fired up, and I am fired up as well. Freaking Jerry barks during Amari. First time all year. And, of course, he just does nothing. I mean, 0 points at halftime, catches a few lucky passes. I mean, he's a joke. People will probably play him. The one good piece of news, Adam, that might make you a little calmer, and I'm surprised you haven't brought him up, Jordan Reed finally gets in the end zone, and he caught the touchdown from Colt McCoy. So what are we doing with Jordan Reed?
Yeah, I like Jordan Reed. His price was $3,800 last week. Certainly played well last week. Did not really change his usage. He was still used in kind of this horizontal way instead of vertical way, but that's okay. I mean, the problem is he's $4,700 and he's a little bit difficult to fit, I think, if you're playing a lot of the Atlanta, New Orleans guys. But yeah, I mean, Jordan Reed is for sure more than fine. One kind of punt that we should probably mention, Jamison Crowder still not practicing. Would be surprised if he played. Trey Quinn was Mr. Irrelevant in the draft this year, last pick of the 7th round in the real NFL draft. A lot of the draft Nick guys really liked Trey Quinn. He was insanely productive at SMU, and he caught 4 balls last week, ran a ton of routes. So Trey Quinn was likely practicing a lot with Colt McCoy with the backups. I think he makes sense down at 3,500 as kind of a punt play. And one other injury note, Jeff Swain, the Cowboys tight end, is going to be out. Last time Jeff Swain was out, Dalton Schultz started. He's kind of a blocker. They also have Blake Jarwin. They also have Rico Gathers. It would be tough to expect much out of any of these guys. We know how talented Rico Gathers is, but if I was playing a lot of lineups, I'd be tempted to put Rico in a few.
Talented or athletic? Talent gets you on the field and puts up numbers. Athletic makes you intriguing for fantasy. Which one is Rico Gathers?
I don't know. If you watch him in preseason, he looks legit talented. He like dominated in the preseason, but for some reason he can't get on the field. So it's a problem.
Yeah, big problem. Big problem. This game is. If you're owning a lot of guys in this game outside of Ezekiel Elliott, it's probably not going to work out too well because of the next game on the slate, which is just preposterous, Adam. I think this is the highest team total I've ever seen. You mentioned that in one of our chats. I mean, the Saints are implied for essentially 36, 37 points, depending where you're looking. We just saw 105 points from the Rams and the Chiefs, which is obviously different. This is a divisional game, but if you look at some historical stuff, I mean, these Falcons-Saints games in New Orleans have just gone bonkers. So last game, it's the hammer on Thanksgiving. Like we talked about previously in the pod, if you're winning money and you don't have exposure or a lot of exposure to this game, it's going to be pretty painful to watch your account just drip down. So what are the news and notes here on this game, and how do we fit in as many people as possible?
Yeah, I mean, I want to have as many guys in my lineup from this game as possible, as much salary possible allocated to this game. And that's kind of where the Zeke question comes in, because if you play Zeke, you're allocating a lot of your salary away from this game. Zeke costs so much, $8,600. From an injury perspective, Traquan Smith, obviously Traquan the GOAT. I believe a couple of people called you guys out last week. I mentioned Traquan, you guys laughed. Thank you to the people on Twitter who had
Did
my
we
back.
laugh?
Yeah, thank you to the people on Twitter who didn't say anything until after the game. Yeah, I don't need these hindsight analysts out here. See, he did something. Yeah, okay, where were you before the game kicked off?
That was one of my only good plays last week. I had all the Traquan Smith. Unfortunately, I had Ertz and Wentz and Aguilar all around Thomas and Traquan, so it didn't work out very well. But we didn't laugh. What are you talking about?
We'll have to review the tape. Producer Luke, remind me to.
I'll need to review the tape. I hope I didn't laugh at Traquan Smith.
Oh, I was trying to tilt Adam the entire podcast. I was trying to talk trash about his son Traquan. I was trying to do everything, and I couldn't fire him up. Finally, get him fired up on the Thanksgiving pod of all pods.
Yeah,
flop lag on Adam getting tilted.
Yeah, we shouldn't be doing the 3-game pod. That's why I'm tilted. But anyways, okay, Traquan. Mispractice back-to-back days. That's the thing about these short weeks. You never know if they're just resting a guy because it's a short week or if he's actually hurt. So we don't know. The time right now is Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern. I have no idea if Traquan is actually hurt or if he's just resting. If he is fine, he's obviously a pretty strong play. He's down to 4,700. Traquan will be fine. I think that the most popular play in this game will likely be Alvin Kamara. It could be Michael Thomas, but with the way Atlanta's been destroyed by running backs, specifically pass-catching running backs, like everybody is on to that at this point. So Alvin Kamara at 8,300 is going to be very popular. Michael Thomas obviously is just an unbelievable player. And when you have the kind of routes that Michael Thomas runs and the kind of accuracy that Drew Brees has, like it's almost impossible for Michael Thomas to fail, because even last week when he doesn't see that many targets, he catches all 4, he gets a touchdown, he has such a huge red zone role, et cetera, et cetera. So I prefer Michael Thomas to Julio Jones, even at the 600 more in salary. And honestly, Al, the Saints have done a good job on Julio. And if you watch what Sean Payton said the last couple of weeks, like he's very matchup specific. He knows the best way for the Falcons to beat him is through Julio. His goal the last 5 times they've played for sure has been to take out Julio. I think that's a big reason why we saw Calvin Ridley just go absolutely ham when these two teams met. I believe it was week 3. So Kamara
but have
Julio,
they actually stopped Julio the last 4, 5, 6 times they've played? He's had a minimum of 94 yards in like every one of those contests. Well, so have they stopped him? Like maybe he hasn't had like a monstrous, but like he's got a really, really high floor against New Orleans.
One of the games he had 1 catch for 16 yards, and he's failed to meet salary expectation a few times. I think he had like 6 for 94 and no touchdowns, like 590, and that's not enough, I think, when you compare him to Michael Thomas and Kamara. I mean, listen, I love Julio for sure. We're parsing between great plays. I guess the question is, do you prefer Julio or Kamara? Do you prefer Julio or Michael Thomas is, I guess, a better question.
Okay, and maybe I'm going to be wrong on this one. I prefer Kamara, then Julio, then Michael Thomas, all things considered. Salary, floor, expectation, ceiling. Mm-hmm. I prefer the salary savings going from Thomas at 8,900 down to Julio at 83 for kind of a very similar wide receiver. Michael Thomas having a better year. Both of them have 40-point upside. As I mentioned, yes, everybody tries to scheme to get Julio out of the game because that's smart football. It's not like, oh, wow, they've really unlocked the code, try and take away the other team's best player. Yeah, every team tries to do it, but you either scheme or you execute better than the other team can try and take it away. I think I'm prioritizing Julio over Michael Thomas this week.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I mean, I'm never going to talk anybody out of Julio. Dude is just the man.
Yeah. Both plays are awesome. I think the by far the best plays in this game are Kamara and Ingram. I mean, there's a really good chance. Obviously, this is a really wide spread, and from a betting perspective, probably makes sense to take the Falcons. But there's 30% chance, 40% chance that this is just a blowout where the Saints just roll again, and like that's so good for Mark Ingram. So my number 1 and 2 priorities are getting both the Saints running backs. You just have such a high floor. I mean, if you can fit Breeze in, like if you have those 3, like you're basically getting exposure to every touchdown until Hill just totally bones you in like some scenario. But like I love the Saints here. On the Falcons side, if they do try to take away Julio, how can we attack? I think a lot of people are going to look to Ridley, so he should be a little bit higher on. I was impressed with Sanu last week. He looked explosive. I know he's been battling injuries all year. He's intriguing. And then I think Austin Hooper, obviously we want to save at tight end, but Austin Hooper could have a really nice game here too. Although the Saints just shut down Zach Ertz, and now that they've shut him down, I'm more of a believer in them being really good against the tight end. So How do you guys unpack these Atlanta guys? I'll start with you, Al.
Okay, one, I can't deal with the tight ends. I can't. Austin Hooper, my favorite tight end this week, and again, he's in a horrible matchup for tight ends, but with all the attention that Julio draws, Austin Hooper does become a guy that becomes a little bit more palatable at the position. We know that there's only been like two tight ends that have had multiple 9-catch games this season, and one of them's Austin Hooper and the other one is Zach Ertz. So at least you know that you have a ceiling. You also know that his standard game is like 2 or 3 catches for 35 yards. So that's also in the locker. But at least versus every other tight end on this slate, save maybe Trey Burton, who has not seen the volume that I expect him to get. I was wrong about Trey Burton in preseason. I thought we were going to get 8-9 targets a game from him, and he was going to step up maybe the tight end 5 on the year. Hasn't lived up to that. So to me, the best percentage chance at a ceiling game from a tight end is Austin Hooper this week. Already talked about Julio. If you want to go with the other wide receivers, that's fine. Pete, you're always high on Tevin Coleman. I think I play Coleman the least out of everybody in this group.
No, everyone plays him the least except for me. I'm just a Tevin Coleman. I mean, this is obviously a tougher spot considering how good the Saints have been against the run, but yeah, Tevin Coleman, hashtag watch the tape, just looks awesome every time he plays. He had a great play last week where he looked spectacular on this run. He dodged a couple people, broke a tackle, and then nothing much else. Yeah, he's an elusive runner on a good offense who just doesn't have the guaranteed red zone work, and they're throwing a lot of touchdowns. The key for him is his involvement in the passing game. I don't hate playing Ingram, Kamara, and Coleman in a lineup, but I am not the person to listen to. Adam, why don't you go through position by position your lineup and break down?
Yeah, look, I mean, when they split Tevin Coleman out wide and they use him as a receiver, and they do that a lot, I mean, he's super effective. He's a way better route runner receiver than people think. So I would for sure want, if I was playing a lot of lineups, to have exposure to Tevin Coleman. The problem, obviously, is he's in like a 60-40 split with Ito Smith, Judge Ito. So it kind of is what it is. Yeah. For me,
Judge could be a contrarian play for sure.
Judge is only 3,400. He's definitely in play on a slate this size. For me though, the guy to bring it back with it is for sure Calvin Ridley. Similar to Traquan and DJ Moore, a rookie who has been quiet lately, but that doesn't mean that he can't just absolutely explode. And I'm a firm believer that these Saints are going to dedicate a lot of their defensive attention to Julio, and we saw what happened. I mean, I think Calvin Ridley had something absurd, like 6 catches for 154 yards and 3 touchdowns.
3 touchdowns. Oh, so painful.
And maybe they don't let him. Maybe they're like, well, we can't let that happen again. But I think it's more likely they're like, well, we're going to stick on Julio. So if I was bringing it back, Breeze is my favorite quarterback by far, even when you consider price. And then if I was going to bring it back, I would have to save salary with Ridley.
I mean, we always like to play running backs at home that are favored. Right? Like home favored running backs is one of the staples of this podcast. It's like, that's what we look for. And people are going to go back and forth over which one they should play between Kamara and Ingram, but realize the fact that in games that they have both played this year, and that the Saints have won, this duo has combined an average 37.6 touches during games that the Saints have won, and both have been active and on the field. Now, disclaimer, I don't know if that's a warning bark or if that is a confirmation bark from Jerry at this point. I have no idea what the bark means anymore, but at least we got one. So you translate it any way that you want. I personally don't speak golden doodle. So to me, it's all about volume. It's all about running backs at home. These two get a tremendous amount of snaps against the worst defense, the biggest flowchart defense that we've seen. So to me, I want to play both of them as much as possible. I think Jerry does too.
Jerry's dead to me. Completely dead to me after last week. I knew that was such a disaster too when it happened. I just knew Amari was going to bust. But he was in such a good spot. God. Amari, come on, kid. Levitan, you played Amari in cash.
I missed all that. I was tending to Jerry. My wife just cannot stop ordering Amazon packages to the house. It's just like a 24/7 stream of Amazon packages. But yeah, I played Amari. He was the most owned wide receiver on the slate. I mean, it was terrible.
Yeah. Fade the
Basically,
Jerry
what I said when Jerry was going nuts was that you have two home running backs against the worst defense on the season, the most flowchartiest of DVP matchups that you have tweeted and then quote tweeted yourself with an update every single week of how it's going. And these two basically combined for about 38 touches in games that the Saints win, and they've both been active this year.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to get, and I know Pete mentioned it, outside of the Taysom Hill disaster, Saints D, Breeze, Kamara, and Ingram all together in a lineup, and the Saints are actually
99.9% of the Saints touchdowns
to score 5 touchdowns. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all.
Yeah, prioritizing these guys for sure makes a ton of sense. And yeah, this is the game that you want exposure to. You can tweet at Adam Levitan, ask him for his lineup. He will be thrilled. God. Ask him for his favorite Thanksgiving meals. That will make him really happy. And I think that's going to do it for our Thanksgiving pod. Any final thoughts, boys?
Yeah, let me ask you guys one question. And this is a serious question. I want a serious answer. Okay. If Thanksgiving food is so amazingly good, why do we only eat it once a year?
One time.
Look at his face. He's like, I got him.
Yeah. There's no answer. It's because it sucks.
Got him.
It's because it sucks.
It does not suck.
Turkey.
Nobody eats turkey. I have a turkey sandwich like 3 times a week.
You don't have the bird carcass. You don't get the carcass out there, stuff the anus with the what have you.
I don't do that.
It's a horrible deal. No one wants to do that much work.
It's a labor-intensive meal.
Look at Adam. He thinks he's just like hashtag
I won
right over there. He's like,
I won.
He's over here doing an end zone dance.
Jerry's licking her lips over there. Yeah,
the reason you only eat this food once a year is because most of the dishes on the table are seasonal. That is why.
Stop it.
Yes.
That's an outrageous answer.
Why don't you eat pumpkins in March?
I eat plums from Chile in the middle of the winter.
It's because it's summer there.
Exactly. So there's no such thing as seasonal. We're in a global economy.
Yeah, because pumpkins grow in Brazil.
Really off the rails.
Because there's a big pumpkin farm in Argentina that we just import all our pumpkins from, especially with all these tariffs now. Pumpkins cost $4,000 to import from Argentina.
All right.
That's why we have this meal at this time of year, Adam.
It's not the right answer.
Al, get us out of here, please.
We're all tilted just in time for Thanksgiving. Enjoy your damn holiday. Adam's got me fired up at this point. We'll be back in a day or two with the actual 3-game pod. Hopefully we'll be a little bit more calm and ready to go. Adam won't be angry. Pete won't be still lamenting over Amari Cooper. Maybe there won't be any Amazon packages to the house and Jerry can chill the hell out. But for all these guys, for producer Luke, who doesn't celebrate Thanksgiving at all, and I just wonder if he's around Thanksgiving time, those damn Americans, I'm Al. Happy holiday.
We are promoters at DraftKings and also avid fans. Our usernames are Adam Levitan, Al Smizzle, and CSU Ram 88. We may sometimes play on our personal accounts in the games that we offer advice on. Although we have expressed our personal view on the games and strategies in this podcast, they do not necessarily reflect the views of DraftKings, and we also may deploy different players and strategies than what we recommended in this podcast.